Okay, let me go to the next two topics. The next two topics are less spiritual illusions, okay? So the first one of them was actually the second chapter I wrote in the book, because truly it's important to try and relate to one specific illusion if you want to understand the rest of the illusions. So I was asking when we were in the break, and if there was a subject matter expert in the audience, and Yuan kindly volunteered to say, I study biology. I think most of you are subject matter experts. You are an expert in something, or at least trying to be an expert in something. So I wanted to ask you a question, or any one of you, by the way, about your subject matter expert in biology, and if there are things that you've been taught in biology that turned out not to be true.
So biology is a very interesting subject that if you write something in a book and start to talk about it, already 30% of something already proved is wrong because it's developed so fast. So if you think about like 40 years ago, we never think about we can make a baby out of a tube, and we can do it now. And probably 5 years ago, or even now, most of people believe that the baby inside a mother, if you want to test the DNA for the baby, you basically have to get some liquid out of it and to test if there's something wrong with the baby. But now, you can test from the mom's blood. Actually, there's a very small amount of DNA of baby. Somehow, we don't know the mechanism very clearly, go back to the mom's body. And like it's very new discovery. So in biology world, what we know today is maybe like there's a very high percentage chance to be proved is wrong. So I asked a question before that how we can like think about the idea come from, but I do have the respect about a lot of unknowns or change of knowledge.
Yeah. And any other subject matter experts? Someone in economics that maybe realized that something that you know was not true, or someone in... Okay, you know where I'm heading with this, so maybe we shouldn't take too much time on this. I am a businessman, so when someone claims to me that they know something, what do? I do an interview, right? We're going to talk about the illusion of knowledge. I'm sorry I said that. Yeah. So I do an interview, right? What does that mean? An interview is we, humanity, okay, we feel very strongly about what we know, don't we? If someone says, hey, Mo, we should do business this way instead of that way, I would go like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I've had 7 deals in that manner before. I know exactly how the deal flow works. I know exactly the funnel. I'll go to the client. I'll do A, B, and C. Trust me, I know, right? Don't we all argue that we know? I mean, you look at the presidential debate, everyone knows, right? Everyone presents their facts as if it's the absolute fundamental truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, okay? What I know is true, right? Someone comes to me and says, I know, you should hire me. What do? I interview them, right? And when I interview them for 2 things. I interview them for what I call the depth and the breadth, okay? If someone claims that they know something, then they should know enough depth about it, and their depth should be accurate, okay? And they should know enough breadth about it. They should have a comprehensive view of all of the aspects of what they claim they know. Don't you agree with that? That's what you do in an interview. So let's interview humanity, okay? Yuan said that there are things that we knew about biology that basically turned out to change over the last 40 years, okay? That has been the story of mankind since the day we started to know what the meaning of the word knowledge is. Okay? When I was in school, they told me electrons, neutrons, and protons were the smallest subatomic particles. This is it. We will never know anymore. Now they're like a gazillion subatomic particles that I wasn't taught in school. Neutrinos and Higgs and blah, 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 right? You remember the entire story of physics when Isaac Newton started out with classical mechanics, and we all believed in that. We even put a man on the moon using classical mechanics. But then it turns out in the 1920s, that, was it 1920s, 1870s, I think, or something like that, that, there is more than classical, 1860, more than classical, mechanics. There is actually Dynamics, and Maxwell starts to say, oh, this applies for one side of the world but doesn't apply for the other. Einstein comes back later, 1905, says, hey, oh, by the way, time is not constant. That t that you have in all of your equation is actually quite relative. It's not even true. And we go on, right? Quantum mechanics says, hey, whatever applies in classical physics is not applicable in subatomic particles. Then we go to, M theories and string theories and what have you, which actually render quantum mechanics very inaccurate, okay? Now, the problem is at any one stage of those convictions, we actually thought we knew, okay? So, it is what I call the arrogance cycle, okay? When we talk about the depths, what happens is that we come through, I call it da, right? We find the discovery. We discover something. We discover that, a projectile goes through a certain thing, and we call that classical mechanics, right? So a certain path, and we call that classical mechanics. That discovery is debatable. It's debated. Most people would hold on to what they believed in and say, no, it doesn't. Prove it to me, okay? So we run numerous experiences, and we try to experiments, and we try to prove it, and observations prove it, and then we put equations in place and predict where it will land, and it lands that place, and what have you, and so it leads to acceptance. Okay? Acceptance is where everybody says, this is proven fact, we know this to be true, don't debate it anymore. If you debate it, you're an idiot. Okay? And that's the stage where I call arrogance. Right? Arrogance is when we feel so strongly about what we know that anyone who debates that becomes an ignorant, okay? And then suddenly, a new discovery comes out, renders what we've just been arrogant about, to be untrue, and so it's a new discovery, new debate, new acceptance, new arrogance, and the cycle continues. Now, if someone tells you that they know something, but they constantly turn out to be wrong, do they really know? Now, I'm not going to talk about physics. Sometimes your friend comes over to you and they're just super rude today, and you go like, you know what? She's rude. I don't want to know that person again, right? Then you realize she just broke up with her boyfriend. It wasn't a great day. She was just very stressed, or, something happened. And, she's not really rude at all. She's just a nice person, but it wasn't a good day. Your knowledge at that point was really, really not true. And that happens all the time, right? We say prices are going to go up, they end up going down. We say housing is going to, to remain forever, it crashes, right? Everything in life, I will use a bit of science in this session just to get your head off the philosophy we spoke about last time, but basically everything keeps changing all the time, and if it keeps changing all the time, then probably it's not true, okay? The other side of this, maybe another subject matter expert would be able to tell us how much do we really know about our topics. Anyone? Any cosmologists here? Any physicists? Okay, I'll give you examples. So I call that the breadth, okay? And let's think about it this way. 90% of the oceans are unexplored. We have no idea. There could be a Godzilla swimming down there. We have no clue. Okay? In biology, I think that all of the DNA we've sequenced so far is what, 2%? Yeah. Yeah, we only know about that, but there is junk DNA, right? So what's junk? Junk is like 90, right? Yeah, 97%? Yeah, 97% of DNA is junk. Why do we call it junk? Because we don't know, right? If we don't know it, then it's junk. When we know it, we will say, not so junk, right? Dark matter, are you aware of that? I mean, they told me growing up that the universe was made up of vacuum, okay? I mean, it was a bit before, but we were late in education in Egypt. But anyway, it was vacuum, right? And 96.5%, I think, of the entire universe is not vacuum at all. The whole universe is solid, by the way. So between dark matter and dark energy, I think 4.5% is the material we know, which we didn't call vacuum before. And then between dark matter and dark energy is the rest of the universe. The majority of the universe we actually used to call vacuum. Okay? Nothing. There was nothing there because we couldn't see it. And so, I could go on, right? The entire universe that we see is 13.7 billion years old, but that star that we see at the edge of the universe is actually a picture of what happened 13.7 billion years ago. Sorry to disappoint you, it may not be there anymore. We have no clue if it exists or if it exploded, but we still say that star in that place, okay? Now, what I'm trying to tell you is this, right? On this little planet that has Wi-Fi on it, okay, most of what we know is a speck in what is out there to know, okay? So if someone comes to me in an interview and tells me, hey, I am the subject matter expert, I am the absolute best salesman in the world, and I say, what do you know about selling? I know that signatures happen at the bottom of the contract. That's all I know, but that's important, right? No, it's not important, it's irrelevant, it's a very tiny bit of what we know. Now, I am a person that is highly anchored in knowledge. I live my life with knowledge. Okay? All that I keep telling you today is based on what I believe is knowledge. Okay? All of it could be wrong. Just so that you don't quote me on this later if it turns out to be wrong. Everything I tell you today might not be true. Right? Sorry about that, but it is the truth. The only truth is knowledge is an illusion. Okay? Knowledge is an illusion for two very interesting limitations that we have. One is our perception is very limited. I told you a little bit about our perception of radio waves, and accordingly, our perception of the real you. Okay? Our perception is very limited, and if our only way to understand the universe is through our perception, then there is so much we don't know. There is so much that dogs know because they can hear ultrasonic that we don't hear, right? We need equipment and we need, right? Most of the subatomic particles, by the way, that we, rave about, we've never seen. We just see their effect, okay? We don't know if they really exist as we imagine them to exist. We just see the effect that they leave behind, and accordingly, we think that they exist. We sort of know that they exist, okay? And with limited perception, you have to assume by default that your knowledge is not complete, okay? And that, again, I use science today, but it applies to your relationship with your friend, okay? You have a limited perception of what's truly going on in their life, and accordingly, with that limited perception, what you really know is very, very limited. The other one, which I got very, very strong pushback from my publishers and my editors on, is that our words are the building blocks of our knowledge, and they're crippling. Of course, in an industry that lives on words, they were very upset when I said that. Okay? But the truth of the matter is that our words are so crippling. I mean, think of the word philosophy. Does that really describe in those many letters what philosophy is? Think about the word skyscraper. Are all skyscrapers the same? Think about the word mango. That's a good one. Think about the word mango. Okay? Can you describe a mango to me? Of course, in words, I can tell you what a mango is. It's a tropical fruit. Juicy, sweet, aromatic, yellowish, orange in color, right? Isn't that a peach? It is, right? Is there a way that you can really describe to me what sky blue is? Okay? You can tell me the wavelength. You can tell me it's the color of the sky. But for all I know, the way you see sky blue might be the way I see rose pink. Okay? Words are so crippling, but they are the entire building block of our knowledge. Okay? And as we build our knowledge using those words, we end up in a place where we really, truly don't know. Okay? So, some wise people decided to capture that in the way they speak about knowledge. So, I respect Lev Landau. Lev Landau is a Nobel Prize winner, a Russian scientist, who basically says cosmologists are often wrong, but never in doubt, okay? Never, ever in doubt. That's exactly what we did when we said the Earth is flat, okay? Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Look, it's flat, right? And then, oh, no, by the way, it's a sphere, but it's the center of the heavenly universe. Everything revolves around the Earth. And you go like, seriously? Yeah, of course. Look, the sun is revolving around us. The moon is revolving around us. It's very clear. And there was not a point in time, even today, when we say the Earth is a sphere and it's revolving around, other heavenly objects. It's actually not a sphere, it's egg-shaped, but hey, who cares, right? So in truth, cosmologists are almost always wrong. I mean, he's polite when he says are often, wrong, but never in doubt. And, my favorite is Einstein's. In theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not, okay? Now, the reason I like that very much is to just remind you that, even people who really know realize that we don't know anything at all. The one thing that you know about knowledge that is true is Confucius's view of real knowledge is to know the extent of your ignorance. Okay? What does this have to do with happiness? Do I even need to tell you that? Right? If you give up your ego around your knowledge, think of how your world will evolve. Okay? If you give up your ego around the fixed, rigid concepts that you hold so true in your life, think about how your world will turn. Okay? I think the biggest illusion of knowledge that there is out there, there are many we can tackle, but the biggest one of them is the illusion of good versus bad. Okay? So for that, we always look at things and we judge them and we say, this is good and that is bad, right? Actually, we need the pencils, Emily. We haven't distributed the pencils. So I will ask you to do an interesting exercise. We call it the erasers test, okay? And the eraser test is actually a simple test. It is a startup here in Silicon Valley that found a way to erase events in the past, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is to take 2 minutes, okay? You're going to take a pencil and your notepad. You're going to write an event that happened a little bit in the past, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Don't go to extreme events like, things that are really horrible in your life, but take an event like the bully in school, okay? And write down the name of the event, and then I'm going to ask you to take the rest of the 2 minutes to think about the consequences of that event in your life, okay? So there was a bully in school. That bully pushed me against the wall. It hurt my shoulder very much. I would like to erase that event, okay? When you decide to erase that event, start to ask yourself, but it also means I wouldn't have met Carolyn, who came and said, are you okay? And then she became my friend in school. I wouldn't have worked out and hit the next bully. I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have done that, okay? So every event that happens in your life, whether you label it good or bad, okay, will have a million little consequences after it that will lead to where you are today. Now, be honest with yourself. Try to write down a little bit of the consequences, and then be honest with yourself. If you still want to erase it, use the eraser on your pencil and erase the event at the end of 2 minutes. Okay? Let's see how that works. 20 seconds is now time to erase if you decide to erase. Okay, we're good. How many erased the event? Okay, do you guys mind sharing maybe what event it was? If it's personal, don't share, but... Okay, no one wants... Are you willing to? Yeah.
I injured my spine.
Injured your spine?
Early 20. I got a lot of attention and help from there. But when I really think about it, I still hope it's never happened.
Okay. Did you meet anybody during that experience that came to you because you injured your spine and you would like to keep in your life?
Not really.
Did you have any interesting experiences while you injured your spine that made you a little more careful about your body in the future?
Yeah, that's the only thing. Like my mom always say, it may be a good thing that if I didn't injure my spine, I probably end up just do a lot of extreme thing and end up kill myself.
Mm-hmm. Is your mom right about that?
I don't agree until today because I'm still alive, but you never know because it's different paths. Personally, I hope it's never happened, but if you ask my mom, maybe she will agree what you said here.
Okay. Does anyone who didn't erase their event is willing to share and say what the event was and why you didn't erase it? Okay. No, you don't want to? That's okay.
Yeah, so I actually scratched my car the other day, and I was really disappointed because, first of all, I really care about my car. I don't want it to be scratched. And the second thing is because that scratch is there forever, so every time when I see it, I feel my stupidity at that time. Yeah.
And why didn't you erase that? Wouldn't you prefer that you didn't?
I was thinking because things aren't always go as you expected. So if I can accept that as a reality, maybe I can be happier with my life. So I'm thinking if I can accept that, that means I can accept a lot of other things.
Are you more careful while you're driving now?
Yeah, I am.
Are you giving more care to your car that you love?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you my example. I lost my son, right? Which is as drastic as it can get. Dramatic? I don't know the English word. Anyway, I lost my son. If Ali didn't leave us, I wouldn't be here, right? I wouldn't be trying to get 10 million people to be happy. And maybe that's not such a bad thing, okay? Even though I still would have wanted Ali to be part of it, but he would probably be very proud of it, okay? If Ali didn't go as a Middle Eastern, he might actually have been drafted in the crazy wars of the Middle East, right? And that would be a bad thing. I had a friend of ours, a wonderful young man, whose son was diagnosed with cancer. His son was a wonderful young man. I loved him dearly, who suffered since the day Ali left. We knew about his cancer a few weeks before Ali left, and he suffered a horrible experience and passed away a couple of weeks ago, okay? And in an interesting way, for Ali to go all of a sudden in his sleep, peacefully, he didn't fear, he didn't feel pain, he didn't suffer in any way, is probably better than Omar, which I hope they're together and having fun now, okay? There are so many ways that I could tell myself I would like to erase Ali leaving, but there are so many ways where erasing Ali leaving would actually be not a great thing, okay? With time, unfortunately, we all get on with life, okay? With time, I think Ali would be very proud of what his death caused, right? And that's the impact of time. There is another impact. When Ali went to the operations room, he was fasting. We observed the month of Ramadan. So he had not been drinking since the morning. And then he went to the hospital. They basically said, you should remain fasting until the operation happens because of the anesthesia or whatever. And so he continued to fast literally for 24 hours without water, okay? 24 hours without water left a huge impression on me. When he was in the operations room, I decided I was going to donate a lot of money for water projects for people that don't have water, okay? And so from a vantage point of view, what happened to Ali's suffering ended up easing the suffering of thousands of people, okay? I wrote about this in Soul for Happy. I hope a lot of people will take that cause and will actually go out and donate for people who don't have fresh water, okay? So imagine if that actually works. From a vantage point of view, Ali's suffering for 24 hours would lead to the easing of suffering of thousands of people for lifetimes, right? If you think about anything that's good and bad and extrapolate it across time or across a different vantage point, truly nothing is good or bad. Nothing is all good and nothing is all bad, okay? As Shakespeare puts it, for nothing is good or bad but thinking makes it so, right? The truth of the matter is that everything has a bit of bad in it, and everything has a bit of good in it. Since Ali left, I had 5 events in my life where each would break a man, literally, okay? It's been a very interesting couple of years. Each would break a man, okay? And when, through those, I actually was, I'll come back to this. I lived through this with my boss and my good friend Astro. And Astro would tell me that there is something that he calls the significance of the event, okay? That we label events as bad and hang on to them, okay? Because I would sort of tell myself, and it happened in my brain, where I told myself, hey, if I let go of Ali, that is a sign that Ali did not mean enough to me, okay? I need to hold on to the event because it is an indication of the significance of the event, okay? But truly it isn't. Sooner or later, life goes on. My son lived in Boston. He was studying in Northeastern University, and I saw him twice a year. We were techies, so we would ping each other twice a week. I only wanted to know that he's happy. That's all I wanted. I wanted to know that he's safe, and I wanted to know that he's happy. The fact that I saw him or not did not really make that much difference. But the truth is, he might now be a little further, a little longer. I might not see him next year, but we'll come to death in a while, and I'll tell you my philosophy about that. But the truth of the matter is, it's a question of time, okay? It's just a little further, a little longer, and I'll be there too, right? Now, if you think about this way, you would see that the biggest issue in our unhappiness is that we label an event, a difficult event, let's call them difficult events. We label them as bad, and that bad event does not match our expectations. In the equation, we become very unhappy, okay? My son left, no young man should ever die. Sorry, not true. The truthful expectation is they do, okay? While, as a matter of fact, if you take that difficult event and forecast or extrapolate a few years later, most of us would not erase the event. Most of the difficult events we had in our life, we actually would look back at them and say, it made us stronger, it made us better, it made us happier. There are studies of people, all over that basically talk to you about any event in your life. Many of the cancer survivors will tell you it was the absolute best experience in my life, okay? Once the experience passes, once the difficult part passes, and you start to ask yourself, would I erase that with everything that came as a result of it? You would actually keep your life as it is today, even though the event was very difficult. The illusion of knowledge is, it affects our arrogance, it affects our approach to not accepting change and really protects the illusion, but its anchor really is the illusion of knowledge of good versus bad, because nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. Oops, sorry. The right way to respond to good and bad, though, is what I call the nudge, okay? And the nudge is a very interesting concept that if you know by default that most of the time you're not going to erase the event if you wait 10 years later, like most of you didn't erase your events. Actually, we only had 2% erase their event, okay? 2% erased it because maybe it was a very difficult experience, but 98% kept it because you knew that with the evolution of time, the event will be good, okay? It will result in a better you. Then you want to ask yourself, why is it that we resist those events so much, okay? The way I call difficult events, and I actually speak to a lot of my friends when they go through a tough time, is I say, think of this as a nudge. The best example of a nudge in the history of modern literature, if you ask me, is that Scottish lady that got an idea to write a book about a wizard in a wizardry school, okay? And then decided not to complete it or couldn't complete it, and then ended up traveling to Portugal, getting married, having a child, and life kept pushing her. Every time she went further away from the book, life became difficult. Her marriage didn't work out well. She had to go back to Scotland. She lost her mother. And at a point in time, she had nothing else to do, literally nothing else to do but write Harry Potter. Okay? Life kept cornering her. Like every time she tried to escape, life was cornering her to have nothing to do but write Harry Potter. This is what I call a nudge, because she became the biggest author in the history of mankind. 450 million copies sold or something like that, right? And if that is how life nudges you, life needs you to go sometimes in a certain direction. The more you resist, the harder the nudge, okay? And so I ask myself occasionally, frequently, I say, look, clearly this is a nudge. Clearly, I should go that path. Why don't we just flow? Why don't we just say, okay, you know what? Ali left. Ali left. There is nothing I can do to bring him back. Okay? I can spend the rest of my life dwelling on this, or I can just flow with the nudge. Make Ali proud, make him remembered, tell how wonderful of a person he is, and hopefully feel good about the fact that one day, I will have done well with the event that I can change nothing about. Okay? In my approach to happiness, the nudge is probably one of the main cornerstones. Because as one of my favorite movies says, everything will be fine in the end. If it's not fine, then it's not yet the end. Okay? That's, what was it? The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. Very sweet movie. I stop here and ask for your comments before we move on.
Sorry, it sounds a horrible person.
No, you're not. It's a difficult one.
It will. I understand the concept of talk about nothing is really good or bad, and you do the exercise to make us think about it. But it's just when we talk about Ali, my heart is just keep bumping. Like, I know you cannot change it. A lot of things that we cannot change it, so we accept it finally, peacefully. Mm-hmm. But if you do, I mean, with all the good things, will you erase
today
it?
I would erase it, of course. If I have a choice today, I would erase it. I think in 10 years' time, I wouldn't.
You mean after 10 years, you wouldn't?
If I end up, okay, I have a certain belief set that you don't have to believe in, but I believe that death is not the end, okay? And I believe that I have, when you lose a child, it gets you to accept death. It gets you to accept your mortality, if you want, okay? It gets you to accept that we're all going one day, right? And so to me, I know I have a limited time in this physical place. I would look back at this in 10, 20 years' time and say, did I really do the best out of it because Ali left? Okay? And if that is the case in 20 years' time, and we do get to 10 million happy, we do get to 100 million happy, then I actually think it would be worthwhile. I think when we both are on the same level of the game, when I join Ali again, I would look back at this and say it was worthwhile. Okay? Would I want to lose my child? I would have never wanted to lose my child. But he's lost already. He's gone. Okay? That's the only truth of nudges. Life happens. And it's all about what you do when it happens.
So with that mindset, I think it's much easier to accept a lot of things happily.
Absolutely.
But what if the people don't have that religion belief that there's afterlife?
We'll talk about afterlife. But so death is a very difficult one. Actually, the reason why I kept death as one of the topics we're going to talk about is it's a very difficult one. But hey, loss of your car, scratching your car, seriously, right? You can apply that kind of knowledge. You can apply that kind of acceptance. I call it committed acceptance to those kinds of events, okay? Difficult test, she dumped me, all of those things, they're not loss of a child. That's a different category. Loss of a child is the most difficult experience a human being can go through, okay? But for all of the rest, committed acceptance will work.